The moment that shattered everything happened on a warm Saturday evening in a crowded hotel ballroom, filled with music, laughter, and the clinking of glasses. My wife, Emily, stood near the stage wearing a dark blue dress I had once told her made her look like she belonged among the stars. We had been married for 11 years, and lately those years felt heavier than they should have. We barely spoke, barely touched, barely looked at each other. I had convinced myself that we were simply surviving together out of habit. Then I saw her smiling at another man. It wasn't a polite smile or a casual one. It was the kind of smile I hadn't seen her give me in years. In that instant, surrounded by hundreds of people, I felt invisible. I couldn't stop watching them. The man stood close enough to make me uncomfortable, and every time he spoke, Emily laughed softly and touched her necklace the way she always did when she was nervous or excited. My stomach twisted into a knot. For months I had suspected something was wrong. Late-night phone calls, mysterious meetings, emotional distance, countless excuses. Every sign pointed toward the conclusion I had desperately tried to avoid. Looking at them together, I felt as if the final piece of a painful puzzle had clicked into place. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even surprised. I was simply exhausted. The fight inside me was gone, replaced by a cold certainty that our marriage was over. As speeches began, I quietly stepped away from our table and headed toward the ballroom exit. My mind raced through memories of the life we had built together. Our first apartment with the leaking ceiling. The road trips where we got lost and laughed for hours. The nights we stayed awake planning our future. Somewhere along the way, all of that had disappeared. I wondered whether she had already moved on emotionally long before tonight. Maybe I was the last person to realize it. As I reached the doors, I pulled my wedding ring from my finger and stared at it. 11 years reduced to a small circle of metal resting in my palm. Then I heard the sound of a microphone screeching through the speakers. The room quieted. Curious, I glanced back. Emily had stepped onto the stage. Her face looked pale, and her hands trembled as she adjusted the microphone. The man she had been talking to stood near the front row, watching her carefully. Guests exchanged confused looks. Nobody knew what was happening. I certainly didn't. I expected a routine thank you speech or perhaps an announcement related to the charity event we were attending. Instead, Emily took a deep breath and looked directly toward the ballroom doors. Toward me, then she spoke words that instantly froze me in place. "There is something I have hidden for years," she said. The room fell silent. "And tonight, before it's too late, I need to tell the truth." A nervous murmur spread through the audience. My heart pounded. I assumed the worst. Perhaps she was about to publicly admit an affair. Perhaps she was finally choosing someone else. Emily's eyes filled with tears. 11 years ago, she continued, a doctor told me I would never be able to have children. They said there was almost no chance. I was devastated, but I was even more terrified of losing the man I loved. Every person in the room sat motionless. I felt my grip tighten around my wedding ring. Emily swallowed hard and continued. I never told my husband the diagnosis. The room remained perfectly silent. I convinced myself I would tell him someday, but someday kept moving further away. Every year became harder than the last. Every conversation about starting a family felt like another lie. I watched him dream about children, and I carried the guilt alone. I thought if I told him, he would eventually resent me. I thought he deserved better. Tears streamed down her face now. My mind struggled to process what I was hearing. This wasn't the secret I had expected, not even close. She then pointed toward the man she had been speaking with earlier. Many of you saw me talking to him tonight, she said. His name is Daniel, and he's not my lover. Nervous laughter echoed through the crowd. He's a fertility specialist who has been helping me for the last 3 years. Suddenly, everything shifted. Every late-night phone call, every unexplained appointment, every secretive conversation. All of it took on an entirely different meaning. Emily continued speaking. 3 years ago, I decided I couldn't live with regret anymore. I wanted answers. I wanted hope. I wanted a future. So I started treatment without telling anyone except Daniel and a few medical staff members. The audience sat frozen as Emily wiped her tears. Then she reached into her purse and removed a sealed envelope. Her hand shook so badly that she nearly dropped it. 2 weeks ago, she said softly, I received results from a final procedure. She paused. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. I planned to tell my husband privately tonight. I even rehearsed it 100 times. But when I saw him preparing to leave, I realized I had already hidden too much for too long. She opened the envelope. Her voice cracked. Against every prediction made 11 years ago, I'm pregnant. The room exploded into gasps. For several seconds I couldn't breathe. My entire world tilted beneath my feet. Every assumption I had made collapsed instantly. The betrayal I thought I had witnessed wasn't betrayal at all. It was fear. It was sacrifice. It was years of silent struggle, carried alone by the woman I loved. Emily looked directly at me. I know I should have told you the truth years ago, she said. I know I broke your trust by hiding this. But I never stopped loving you. Not for a single day. Everything I did was because I was afraid of losing you. The vulnerability in her voice was unlike anything I had ever heard. Without realizing it, I began walking back toward the stage. The crowd parted as I moved through the ballroom. Emily's eyes never left mine. Every painful misunderstanding, every argument, every silent dinner suddenly seemed smaller compared to the truth she had carried for over a decade. When I reached the stage, neither of us spoke for several moments. Words felt inadequate. Finally, I climbed the steps and stood beside her. Tears filled my eyes as I took her trembling hands. The audience watched in complete silence. Then I slid my wedding ring back onto my finger and gently pulled her into my arms. The applause started slowly before growing into a thunderous standing ovation, yet I barely heard it. In that moment, nothing existed except the woman holding on to me as if she feared I might disappear. We both knew the future wouldn't magically become perfect. Trust would need rebuilding. Painful conversations would still happen. But for the first time in years, we were facing the truth together instead of separately. As we stood beneath the ballroom lights, surrounded by emotional strangers wiping away tears, I realized how close I had come to destroying something precious because of assumptions. I had walked toward the exit, ready to end my marriage forever. Instead, I walked back toward the stage and found a new beginning waiting for me there.